Hello and welcome to Dragonfire Men's Alchemical Path podcast. I'm your host, Daryl Kroll, and today we have Luke Balcke, who is a professional astrologer, and I had a session with him. My wife and I both had a session with him and was quite blown away by the things he had to say, and I won't share any of that. Luke, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure, mate. I'm 47 years old, father of three, divorcee. And yeah, I was a pest controller for 20 years of my life. Sort of fell into that when I was young
Really?
through my father, and he was a builder, and my brother was a builder, and I sort of went down that sort of industry. And I got to a point in my life where I had a great business, family, house, life, holidays, cars, all the stuff that you're supposed to acquire to sort of tick the boxes and feel like you've made it, sort of thing. And from the outside looking in, it looked like that. But from the inside looking out, I was miserable. And I was probably living someone else's life, maybe trying to seek a little bit of unconscious validation or recognition from my father. And it was in that life that, in order to deal with my unhappiness, I would drink. And the drinking got worse, predominantly worse, and I'd do stupid things drunk and wake up with no memory and make
Yeah.
a fool of myself. And I had three young kids at the time in a business, and then I just hated the business. I didn't want to do the work, and it was just one of those things. And it got to a point towards the end of 2014, and I made a cut of myself at a wedding. And the next day, my partner had told me all the things I'd done and said that I had no memory of, and I was like, "Oh fuck, something's not going on here. I got to do something about this." And so 2015, like the end of 2014, actually, it was about 3 or 4 weeks before Christmas. I decided that's it. I'm going to stop alcohol for a year. And I did. I cut out alcohol for a year, and I went down a bit of a spiritual path and started looking into things. My gateway drug into conspiracy and also led me to astrology was a 9/11 conspiracy video.
Yeah.
Someone sent me one of those, and I started to sort of go, "Whoa, what do you mean? Like, there's a conspiracy here, sort of thing." That led down every other rabbit hole. It was just like, because I was clear minded, I didn't have distractions. I was just hungry for information. And, one thing leads to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, you're questioning the moon landing.
Yeah.
The next thing, you're questioning the shape of the earth. And it was
Yeah.
just a never ending sort of this path of discovery. And through that, I realized my unhappiness was that I didn't want to be in the life that I was in. I didn't
Yeah.
want to do the work I was doing. I didn't even want to be in the relationship I was in. But you were stuck in it, so how do you get out of that? And along that journey, and I always tell people this these days, right? So if conspiracy doesn't lead you to spirituality, you're doing it wrong. That's my belief. So that's where it led me. It led me to questioning the nature of reality, because I'm like, well, if they're lying about everything, or they're covering things up, or what's the agenda? Why would they do that? Why?
Yeah.
And along that pathway, I got exposed to astrotheology, which is the study of astrology and religion and tying the two together.
Yep.
And it came to my awareness that really religions, all the religions of the world, are telling the story of the stars through their mythology. And I was like, what? Well, there must be something to the story of the stars. Let me look into that. And that led me down the path of looking into astrology beyond the sort of superficial level that we're mostly as seeing, which is the horoscopes in magazines and newspapers.
Yeah.
And it's my belief that they're there by design to sort of create a little bit of a marker not to go, don't go down there. That's woo woo. It's, non-specific, it's generic, it's, pseudoscience, so to speak. So if you go beyond that superficial layer and go to the depth of astrology, you'll see that birth chart analysis and understanding reality through the lens of astrology is like timeless. It's been part of our ancient culture for a very long time. The mystery schools of the past,
Yep.
royals, kings, rulers of the past, all had their own professional astrologers. And in this modern day, a lot of corporations, governments,
Yeah.
and agendas are all done to either astrological symbolism or timing of astrological alignments and events. And once you start to understand astrology at that level, it's almost like the world and the reality around you speaks to you in that same language. And you see the world, yourself, and life a lot differently. And
So
for
just
me, sorry, go.
just touching on that, how you said things are done at certain times,
Mm,
what advantage would one have at doing something around a specific time?
yep. there is a there's a way in which energy, consciousness, and reality unfolds. It's coming from pure potential of source energy, undifferentiated, undiluted potential, into physical manifestation, and there is a divine order in which that carries out. So, what astrology allows us to understand is the mechanisms of that order and how things unfold, and what certain things are energetically occurring for us consciously, right? So, the planetary positions in the sky above, I don't believe, I fall into the camp of correlation over causation. I don't think astrology is causing anything. I think that life's happening a certain way, and astrology just helps us understand the way in which it's happening. So it's sort of like timing these things. So consciousness, right, which is energy, is is always in a state of change, evolution, expansion, right? So certain times consciousness is going to behave a certain way. How do we understand that flow of consciousness as we look to the planets and the stars and we say, oh, that's happening, so therefore that's going to correlate to this aspect of consciousness. So if we are all part of consciousness, not separate from it, but engaging within it, we're sort of co-creating within this, field of consciousness, and you understand what the flow and energetic signature of that consciousness is and what that might represent, then you can do things at certain times that are going to have maximum impact because they're going to affect mass amount of consciousness.
Yep.
So it's like going with the flow of the universe.
Yep.
And there's a saying from J.P. Morgan, investment banker from the 19th century, which was, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. And it's like they look at the cycles that are depicted by the planetary movements and they understand that's what's happening down here. And what they do is they get in alignment to those. So they know, okay, if this is what's happening, everyone's doing this, then we'll do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was something that I've definitely paid attention to where, I mean, even people like Hitler, for example, had a team of astrologists and psychics and things like that to predetermine ideal times for whatever it may be. Have you heard of the electric universe?
A little bit. Haven't
Yeah.
delved really deeply into it.
Okay. That's something I'd recommend anyone looking into, where sort of looking at alignments of planets, etc., and things like that, where everything is tied in electrically, not so much on a gravitational and matter sense,
Mm-hmm.
where things like quantum string theory and quantum entanglement, etc., where if two particles have been connected, it doesn't matter what distance they're at, they still sense the same thing simultaneously. Makes perfect sense to how energies of, let's say, a certain planet can affect your consciousness, the collective consciousness, something else, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, everything is connected. There is no separation. As above, so below, as within,
Yeah.
so without. There's a universe above us, and we're playing out a miniature version of that down here. And what's happening within us is happening externally around us as well.
Yeah.
So, and astrology is just the language that energetic sort of reality speaks in.
Yeah.
So when you
Absolutely.
understand that, for me, when I went down that path and I started to understand it, it really made sense to me. And I'm the type of person that likes to know why and how things work. And I would getting to the point of my spiritual journey of going, well, what the fuck am I here for? What am I doing? Who
Yeah.
am I? And astrology helped me understand that. It's not like I'm trying to fit myself into astrology. I'm not trying to sort of use astrology as a way to, you know, explain away my behavior. It's more about just understanding aspects of who I already am from an astrological perspective. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like cosmic psychology in a way.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And then it allows you then to interpret reality, experiences, relationships, life from that lens. And that can give people an awareness that they don't have.
Yeah.
I like to think that in my sessions, that's what I'm able to do is give an awareness that you just go, oh, okay, I see now. Or
And
that
things
makes
click.
sense.
Yeah.
Exactly, things click. So part of the process of change or any change at all is become aware of what needs to be changed. And a lot of the time, people are desiring, wanting change, but don't know what to do or how to go about it. And astrology is a fantastic tool to help with that awareness. Then the work is then you have to take that awareness and integrate that into changes in your life. So that's the work. But astrology is just like the light that shines on, and you go, okay, I get it.
Yeah. That's it. And I see it as that as well. It's a powerful tool because gosh, I don't know how many years ago now. I had a teach or have a teacher. She's still a teacher of mine, metaphysics teacher that I did a metaphysics course. She does astrology, and I've been getting readings every year. So I sort of set up my year with that, and I look at certain energies, and she'll tell you, or you could tell you, same as anyone that does astrology can tell you at this point in time, there will be this type of energy, and it just makes sense.
Yeah,
Kind of map
absolutely.
out your year, whether it's starting a business or closing a business, whatever it may be. Before we get deeper into astrology, I do want to ask you about any masculine role models. You did mention your father before, how you sort of, let's say, put the mask on to gain his approval, something that many men go through. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm one of five kids. I'm the fourth youngest. I had an older sister, an older brother, me, and then a younger sister. And my elder sister was my dad's sort of golden child, but she was the first daughter. So my older brother, he was more like dad's shadow. So he sort of became dad's shadow where dad went, did what dad did, and all of those things. My second oldest brother was rebellious. So my dad sort of almost like just said too hard, and my mum took him under my wing. And then there's me, the fourth, going, well, how do I get attention? How do I get seen? So I became the clown. That was my archetype as a kid, was just like, I'll be funny. I'll be the clown. Do the adventurous, do the silly things, get the attention in that way. When I got older, I hadn't really broken away from that in a sense. So I would do that in a way to create a mask to sort of say, yeah, everything's all good. But internally, I was quite insecure
Yeah,
because what I needed positive reinforcement. I needed recognition from my father that I was seeking, that I watched, my older sister and brother get easily, and I had to really work hard to try and get that. So then when I became an adult, I tried to work hard to try and unconsciously seek his approval, his recognition. Will he be proud of me? And one of the biggest fears I had was being a failure in his eyes. So I would, interestingly, that would sort of sabotage my success, because I'd always be like operating to the level of like, I don't want to fucking push too hard, because what if I fail? And my
yeah.
biggest fear was like I could disappoint or upset my father.
You'd lose that attention.
Yeah, yeah. So along my journey, I had to get to a point in my life where I did fail in his eyes in a big way, and he did articulate and realize that to me, and that was quite a confronting moment. But at the time I went through it, it was very difficult. But in retrospect, it was actually the best thing that ever happened, because it liberated me from actually caring what he thought. Because now the worst thing that could have happened is I've let him down, and he articulated that to me. Now I don't have to be afraid of that, because I'm still here and I'm alive and I'm okay, even though that happened. So there, it's like giving me an ability to like not care what people think, which is important if you're going to have like a social like reputation or image. Especially in today's world, you can't really care about the opinions of others if you're putting yourself out there.
No, you gotta you
But
gotta let that slip.
yeah, so but having said that, my father is like a really strong role model for me. Blue collar, sort of came from nothing, did many jobs until he found the one that worked, and was really, really successful at that. And yeah, he was able to get by in life and achieve and accomplish and have success and provide as well. And then my older brother is also a role model as well. He's about 3 or 4 years older than me, and he's always been someone that I've looked up to, and he's a good role model. We have a lot of similarities and a lot of connections, and he's in my dark times. He's always been there to sort of go like, "Fucking pull your head in," like you need that sort of, not to pity or say it's okay, or it's like he's the guy to sort of go, "What are you fucking doing?" Like
No, that's a tough love that a lot of men need. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So yeah, they're definitely two. Of like my life role models. And then through my awakening journey, I came into contact with a guy who I met through work, and he didn't know it, and he still doesn't know it at the time. I call him one of my mentors. And we would just catch up when I was going through a lot of tough times, and we would catch up every 4 to 6 weeks and have a coffee, and he'd just check in with me, and we'd talk about things. And he would never give me advice directly. He'd just tell me about experiences in his own life that mirrored mine,
yeah,
and how he dealt with them or overcome them, what it meant. And it just constantly reassured me, and it kept me like sort of wanting to improve myself, but also recognizing like I'd have to be perfect.
yeah,
I can fuck up and fail and get it wrong and that. So I call him my sort of silent mentor.
Yeah, that's a big one for men as well. It's great that you had that, but I think a lot of men don't, and they, myself in particular, get really hard on myself if I make a mistake. And of course, that's part of being human. That's how we
Yeah,
learn. That's how we improve.
for
It's
sure.
making mistakes. But if you're going to destroy yourself over a mistake, then
Yeah,
that's where damage happens. And so it's great you had that.
yeah, yeah. It's just giving you the permission to like try so that you're not afraid of the failure, you know,
Yeah.
because otherwise you don't try. And I see it a lot, like people sabotage themselves or their success, or they limit themselves because they've got an unconscious fear of like, fuck, if I get it wrong, or a failure, or humiliation, or judgment, criticism. And it's like, well, you know what? Like the better thing is to fucking give it a go and actually embrace the failure, rather
Oh,
than
yeah.
try to avoid it. Just like embrace it. Go, yeah, but you know what? We'll pick myself up and do it again.
Yeah. Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
It's the way we learn. It's
And anything too that we're doing new in life. And I know people going through, since COVID in particular, but probably since September 11, there's a lot of awakening. There's a lot of like expansion of awareness and consciousness, and therefore a lot of people are making huge transitions in their life, new relationships, new careers, new work, new all those types of things. And you step out into these new activities. It's nice to know that like, you can overcome that. Fear of failure or criticism or judgment, like fucking don't take shit too seriously, and recognize like you can you can fail, like give yourself permission to not be fucking getting it right.
yeah,
I think there's too much in social media, at least. There's a lot of like polished perfection and like this sort of unseen benchmark of like, oh, this is where you need to be, and it's like, you know what, no one starts at that level.
it's all bullshit anyway.
Ah, exactly.
Well, most of it. Like I really don't trust so many people that post, "Oh, look at my life," and they're on a yacht. And, well, the yacht's fucking hired. And anyway, won't go into that.
No. You know what I mean? Like it's there as a part of our social fabric, and
Yeah.
it's become a pretty powerful aspect of our social fabric, whether it's for good
Mm,
or
it's
bad.
a bit of a
Yeah,
toxic one, to be
yeah,
honest.
there are aspects of it that are for sure. There are aspects of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it's a tool, right? So how do we use it? And I think if we can consciously use it, I think it's a fantastic tool. Like no other time in history have we had access to be able to communicate to each other across borders, boundaries, and races the way in which we can and do.
Yeah.
So
Well, that is the good side of it, isn't it? We can
yeah,
share that much information. If everything was truthful and honest and open and heart based, then it would be an absolutely amazing tool. And it
yeah,
is. It is an amazing tool.
yeah,
Um, I wanted to ask you the questions that are coming to mind now are obviously around masculinity, yet I do feel like since you're an astrologer, there's some definitely golden information that you can let people know. I wanted you, if you could explain a bit about the 9 year cycle, personal cycles, the collective cycle, and how that will impact a person and a collective.
I don't really look into that. That's not my
Ah,
field.
right.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not really following that pathway, or don't look into that too deeply myself. I look at
Okay.
astrological cycles,
Yep.
and we have many, many different astrological cycles, and they're all planetary cycles.
Okay.
So some of our big planetary cycles would be our Jupiter cycle for growth and our Saturn cycle for challenge. And Jupiter cycles, we spend a year in each sign and have a 12-year cycle. Saturn cycles, we spend about 2.5 years in each sign and have a 29-year cycle. Those in particular, you can look at the growth and development of someone as well as where they come in overcoming obstacles and challenges and setbacks. So, yeah, I sort of look more into that side of things rather than the other types of cycles or numerological cycles and things, even though that they parallel and they cross over. And numerology, astrology, and tarot, they're all strongly, deeply connected. I tend to just more work with the astrological cycles.
Okay. I didn't know they were separate. Okay. So do you do what's called the Saturn return? Do you work with that?
Yeah, so your Saturn return happens between the ages of 28 and 30. And then it again happens in your late 50s towards your 60. And if you're lucky enough to live old enough, you'll get another one in your 90s, late 80s into your 90s. So they mark developmental cycles of maturity. So the first Saturn return, you could argue that actually we don't really come into full adulthood until our first Saturn return. Even though we're technically an adult at 18 and in America it's 21, I look at like, are we an adult? No, we've got a ticket that says we're an adult. We're still fucking a child in an adult's body.
Yeah. So 28 to 30, that is, you said?
28 to 30 is your first Saturn return.
Yep.
And it's where society's pressure becomes evident in your life, which is, you know, maturity and responsibility. And what are the ways in which modern society values responsibility is settling down, getting married, having kids, buying or building a house or starting a business. So between 28 and 30, it's remarkable the amount of times that people do one of those five things. I myself married at my Saturn return, even though I wasn't into astrology at the time. Retrospectively, I was able to go back and go, what's happening in my life around these key parts? Oh shit, I got married at my Saturn return. It's a super common theme because marriage is the way to sort of express to the world, look, I've made it. I've got a partner. I know what I'm doing. I'm settling down, you know. So it's a real Saturn theme. In fact, when you marry, you put a ring, which the planet with rings is Saturn.
Saturn.
And a ring represents a boundary to bind, right? To bind something. And you put it on your sun finger, the finger that represents your sun. You're saying, I'm binding myself, sun, to another person. So it's a Saturnian ritual, marriage in general. So the problem that I see in modern times with marrying at the Saturn return is that if most people, not all, but most that marry at the 28 are settling in their life. They're settling. So they might not necessarily choose the right partner based on what's right for them. They'll choose one that they think, oh, this will do, right? This is where I'm at. And the other thing is we're measuring our life through time at our Saturn energy. And Saturn return is the key one, although every 7 years we get this real key marker of along that journey. And when we have a Saturn influence in our life, he's the Lord of time. He's Kronos in Greek mythology. So what that means is we're measuring our life in time. And what do people do at their late 20s? They go, fuck, I'm nearly 30. I better wise up. I better settle down. I better get, pretend I know what I'm doing. So one of the mechanisms to do that in social reality is, settle down, marry.
Yeah.
Of those people that settle into the wrong relationship at their Saturn return, how long does the marriage last? About 7 years. Because at 7 years from that point, the Saturn in the sky is going to make an aspect back to where it was when you got married called a square. And the square is a test, like a tension test to the foundation of whatever you did at that time. And if it's not built on a really rock solid foundation, 7 years, it's tested.
So it sort of shakes up that foundation, and
that's what
it's
the
not solid,
7-year
it
itch in
crumbles.
marriage is, right? The 7-year itch they talk about is the marriage thing. And if you make it through that, even though you're not necessarily fundamentally, foundationally connected, then 13, 14 years, you're like, it's not going to pass that point. And it's so like common to see that. I myself went through that, and a lot of people that I see marrying around their Saturn return end up in divorce, 7 to 9 years later. A lot of other things that can be doing around your Saturn return is where it's the best thing to do is to sort of take responsibility for yourself and say, you know what, I'm just going to do what's right by me. We've got to succumb to, or not succumb, but we've got to try not to succumb to the pressure of society or our peers to suggest, come on, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You got to have it all worked out. And you don't, but you have the feeling of like that you do. So that's where it creates a bit of urgency where people think, oh, fuck, I better do something. I've got to do something. I'm nearly 30. And a lot of that is like just the cycle of Saturn completing. What you gain from Saturn energy is maturity, right? It asks you to confront reality and life and take responsibility, step up, become the authority of your life. Interestingly, the Saturn energy is going to be really significant 2026. Because there's an activation of Saturn this year, and the last time we had a really Saturn year was 2020. So the themes of authority and responsibility, sovereignty, right? These come really into the consciousness of people. Now, are we able to take it, or is it being taken from us? So look at 2020.
That was a good year.
Yeah. Well, it was a time of the crown virus, right? At the beginning, it was called a coronavirus, the crown virus. Crown is the Saturn, but your Saturn is your crown. So if you have your crown, you are the boss, you are the authority, you are sovereign, you have your control of your life. If you don't, you submit to someone else's authority and become dependent on it. And that's what our big daddy government plays the role of Saturn.
Mm,
We'll look
try
after you,
to.
follow the rules, right? And what are people to become? Become dependent on the government.
Yep.
So that was a huge theme through 2020.
Yeah, taking back to something you said where we met, and you did say that what you're doing in 2020 would be an indicator of how 26 would go.
Yeah, so with Saturn, it's the planet that rules over consequences for actions and choices. Consequences can be rewards because if you've laid good seeds, you can reap good deeds, right? So you reap what you sow, and the reaper is known as the Grim Reaper. That's Saturn. He's the lord of death and karma. And what that means is you do something here, and down the track is where you pay the price or you reap the reward. The
Mm,
lack or the unawareness or the negative choice or action can lead to a negative consequence. The positive choices, actions, and seeds can lead to reward for effort. And Saturn doesn't tell you that you're going to be kicked in the ass or not. He just says, well, this is what you did. So this is what you're going to experience.
yeah.
And it arcs over time. Like we get these real key moments throughout our culture and individually where we face consequences or reward for effort. So, because in 2020 you had a Saturn Pluto conjunction, the world went through an upheaval and a crisis through health pandemic. It was in the sign of Capricorn, and in um, old mythology, Capricorn was known as Pan, the goat god Pan, and that's where you get all the words that start with Pan: pandemonium, panic, pandemic. So we had a pandemic when Saturn and Pluto were in the sign of the Pan goat. So we now arc what people's choices were in 2020, 2021, right? They made choices. They had certain behavior. They did certain things. The reverberance of that now, the arc, is coming into realization this year with Saturn making its conjunction with another planet, Neptune. And the consequences, let's say, on a collective level of those choices are going to be really evident and really felt for a lot. And in particular, in relation to the solution to COVID, which was the needle, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and there's going to be a lot of like negative health repercussions that have been happening, but are probably going to just amplify that
Yeah.
this
Well, we've
this year.
definitely seen
Yeah.
a lot of the results of that.
Yes. Yeah. And the difficult thing to bear witness and to navigate that time period is to not be enraged and like, fuck. It's like there was a choice that was made.
Yeah.
And even though the choices were difficult to make, it was still a choice. Right.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at it at the end of the day, it was a choice. Could have mean potentially for someone losing their house or their job or whatever. Yet, that was the way it
Very
was
difficult
presented. So
choices.
it's, yeah, there's a lot of,
Yeah. And there's going to be people that where that is the I guess the responsibility for that choice, whether it was a hard one or not, or what it was done or was good or bad, I think that's just going to come flooding into their awareness. Like one of the best ways that people can overcome challenges, difficulty, obstacles in their life is take responsibility for where they're at.
yeah,
Not for what happened, but for where they're at. Just like, well, like this, I put myself here, whether I did it consciously or not, or whether I did it with the best intention or not. This is where I am, and this is my life led me here. So confronting that and coming to terms with that is the best way to overcome it.
yeah.
Because if you don't, you remain a victim. The victim remains powerless, and there's no power to change. So
That's life, though, isn't it? Every choice, every decision you make is basically getting you or puts you to where you are.
yeah, yeah. So it's a nice segue into a little bit of 2026 with the Saturn Neptune conjunction happening in the sign of Aries. Aries is the sign of leadership. So if your viewers have gone through somewhat of a bit of an awakening pre-COVID or post-COVID, expanding their awareness and consciousness, starting to see the world in a different way, realizing there's a lot of corruption and fuckery, and there's a lot of like the world isn't as they've told us it is, then you've gone through an initiation of sorts. And what 2026 is going to call for, because if you look around the world, we do not have any good ones, is sovereign leadership, right? So the individual becoming a leader rather than seeking external leadership outside of us. Like there's no person, there's not a Trump or a political person, there's no one that's going to come to save us, to stand up, to be the leader, to lead like a new way of living and being in this world. That at an individual level, that's what it's going to call. If you've gone through that now, if you haven't and you're still, muggle land and sheep and believing everything that you see is real and the government would lie and blah blah blah, then this isn't probably good. This is just not making sense to you.
Yeah, it's going to go over the
But
head.
if you've gone through somewhat of a conscious awakening or shift in your consciousness or awareness pre-COVID, post-COVID, or around that time, that's initiation. What are you being initiated for? Because it's time for action. And that action is to stand in the sovereignty of leadership. No, no, no. I don't have an external leader I look up to. If you have a connection to source, God, if you want to call it that, fine, but no person should be put above anything like that. That's your job. That's your role, your responsibility. And 2026, that's what we need is sovereign leaders, spiritual leaders, not spiritual like, kumbaya, love and light,
Gurus.
bollocks. Spiritual leaders in knowing really who we are at a core level, who we are, why we're here, what we're here to do, to be custodians, to look after one another, to be of
Yeah.
service, to contribute in a meaningful way, to look after this world. All right. So you look around the world and like, what the hell is fucking going on? And also, too, especially in Western culture and Western governmental systems, there are weak, weak, weak leaders. Weakness. That's what we've got. Is we've got
Absolutely.
weakness. Well, there's nowhere out there, and that's a lot of the. I guess the loss of faith and confidence in the system is a realization is like, yeah, this is on us now. This is on the people, right? And it's probably always been that way, but we've just been asleep to it. And now is 2026 is the realization is like, yes, it's up to us.
Well, that
So
is it, isn't it? It's trusting the government with your life, basically, and that's hasn't worked out
it
that
never
well.
does. No, because the government has no soul. It's a soulless entity, and it's operated by other souls that have sold their soul, right? So they it has no soul. So a soulless entity, whether it's a human or a spirit or an organization or an institution, it cannot serve you. It cannot serve your highest good. It cannot serve the people. It can't because it doesn't have a soul. Right? So it can control and subvert you, but it can't serve you. So the realization that we need to come to is that like this isn't about just a new political system or government. It's just about collapsing the whole thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing. We need to like they talk about a great reset. That's them hijacking this process and wanting to put in the one world order. And they will try, but it'll fail. Ultimately, it's going to come back to the people. And what we need to do individually, collectively, and through community is realize that and come together. So to support one another in that sovereign leadership, to
It
stand
has to,
in
yeah,
that.
that individual sovereignty and sort of going back to maybe even tribal or Viking parliaments, things like that, where people are in control of their neighborhood and their city, perhaps. It's just, it's, we've gone so far from the sovereign power of individuals where it's all just people have just relinquished power. Okay, yes, the government's got it. All I have to do is vote once every few years. This person I supposedly trust with my best interests, my children's best interests, put them into public schools or put them into some type of indoctrination camp, and hopefully they turn out best for the best. But it's like you got to understand that you're putting your children into a place that has completely different values to you.
It's
And
been corrupted as well. Maybe at its inception, maybe it was a good system, and it probably has served us to a degree and enabled a civilization to advance at a level. But what's happened is it's been corrupted.
oh yeah,
And now that it's been corrupted to the degree that it has, and we're also able to see the level of corruption, especially over the last, we've been paying attention over the last, even before COVID, probably 2016 was when it really started to sort of come through to our awareness of like the level of corruption and just who is being corrupted. And it's the whole lot. It's everything. It's everywhere. And it's so bad that people that are being corrupted don't even know they're being corrupted.
mm.
So that therefore there is no fixing the system from within. There's no new leader. There's not a new vote or referendum or anything. It's just it has to collapse.
Yeah.
It
And
has to
then,
collapse. Now, what will be in replace of that in the interim? Yeah, it needs to come back, like you said, to localized community, and coming together in like your environment that you share a common, value or connection in your environment. And if people in another environment on the earth, whether it's in another state or country, have a different way of living, a different way, good respecting of that. That's their will and choice. This is how we live. That's how they live, and then there can be unity through that division. Whereas what they're doing is at the moment is they're using that difference and division as a cause of conflict,
and flooding places.
separation. Yeah, us versus them, and then it's this group, it's this group, it's this group. It's like that's where they want us fighting each other.
Well, that does sort of give them the ability to manipulate things, because I think they are buying time. So they're flooding places with non-compatible
Exactly.
cultures,
Yes.
creating division. People are too occupied with that to actually look at the bigger picture. So they're
Mhm.
trying, but I agree it's not going to work.
No, I mean, but like any agenda that they push, like COVID, for example, there are going to be casualties, and they get people that get caught up in it. So what I've been telling my sort of clients and community for some time is like depolarize yourself and observe, bear witness to this, but don't get caught up in either that
Yeah,
side or that side.
yeah.
Because there is no winner in any of that.
No, that's the thing. Like, because I did get really caught up in the whole COVID thing, and it was like, oh, how can I be asked to take an experimental vaccine or whatever? I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. And then it was just like the whole point of it was control.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I did want to get your view on 2026, because you shared some really interesting insights as
Mhm.
to how things are looking and how things will be aligning, as we know that planets are completely, uh, what's the word? We know where they're going to be at certain times and the energies they're going to produce. The Mayan calendar, all of that were incredibly accurate.
Mhm.
How those cultures got the information, maybe it's a mystery, maybe it's not.
Mhm.
But let's hear your view of how 2026 is going to play out for the collective.
Well, the interesting thing about looking at the sky is that the sky that we look at is the same sky that the first people ever on Earth looked at. It hasn't changed. And although it changes within itself, and planets and stars and that will orbit through the zodiac and the fixed constellations and things, it hasn't changed. It's still the same planets, the same constellations. They've been given different names through different ages, but it's the same thing. So it's timeless. That's timeless, and that's the cosmic clock in the sky. That's the big cosmic clock that governs over the year, the great year. The big cosmic cycles we go through are 25,000 year cycles. So that's where we look for the knowledge of what's really going to be happening on the earth. Um, and there's a match, a mirror. That's the macrocosm, where the microcosm. That's the big picture, where the little picture. That's the us above, where the so below. There's a story going out up here. It's going to be played out down here, and it's been that way, and it will always be that way. So if you know how to read that, then you can say, well, that's happening up there. We can look down here to sort of see how that's going to affect us and what types of experiences we can expect. The other thing astrologically we can do is we can look at key astrological alignments that happen cyclically, and we can go back to when they last occurred and go, what was happening on Earth when this last happened? Now, the interesting thing about 2026 is there are some things that have happened before, but not very commonly, or that haven't happened for some time. And then when you combine all the things that are happening together, that's never really happened before. So the Saturn Neptune conjunction is probably the key astrological signature of 2026. And Saturn deals with reality. So whenever we have an active Saturn energy, things are really happening on Earth. They're real, right? So the last one was COVID. The one before that was September 11. We also had in between little Saturn energies. So the Boxing Day tsunami, that was a Saturn signature with the planet Chiron happening on that day. There's always, when there are shit going on, like real stuff happening, there's Saturn's influence somehow. So you could expect there's going to be real fucking things happening this year. It's in the sign of Aries. Aries is war, really. He's the god of war. So conflict, aggression, assertion. Uh, it's initiation as well. It's the spark. It ignites things. So the beginning of something new. We're also numerologically going into a 1 year, right? So we're in a 1 year, and then we're going into a fire horse year through the Chinese zodiac too. So there's a lot of fiery, active, one energy, new energy. Then we have a Saturn Neptune conjunction happening in February. Neptune is the planet of disillusionment. So it dissolves realities, boundaries, structures. The last time Saturn and Neptune were together in the sign of Capricorn, on the day of their alignment, the Berlin Wall collapsed. So, very significant world event occurred on their conjunction. The argument is, did it cause it? No, it correlated it. It showed us the timing of it. It didn't cause it. What caused it was whatever was going on in that sort of dispute in East and West Germany, and the shifting of consciousness, and how all of a sudden an event happens, and the next thing the wall collapses. That time, that Saturn Neptune conjunction was also the collapse of the old Soviet Union. If you go back to the one before that, that was the civil rights movement in the US. So a massive uprising of colored people claiming, equality. You go back to the one before that, it timed in with the First World War. The one before that, it timed into the American Revolution. So there are key, huge events that occur for us. The difference with this one is it's happening at the 0 degrees of Aries, and that particular degree is the beginning, right? It's the alpha point of the zodiac. So it's called the world degree in astrology. We call it the world degree or the world point, because things that happen at that point affect all of us. They're not an individual aspect to it, even though it can be individual. It's going to be something that's going on that's affecting the entire world. Everyone will be aware of it, and it will be real because Saturn's there. So that's happening. Now, if it was only that, you'd be thinking, okay, that's pretty significant. However, we've got Pluto transiting the sign of Aquarius. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius, about 250 years ago, timed to the French Revolution and the American independence. So Aquarian energy is very rebellious and revolutionary, right? As it deals with a lot of the awakening of consciousness within people. So we have a mass awakening of consciousness within people. We have this trigger in Aries, which is about uprising or initiation or even potential conflict that leads to war. And then you also put the planet of rebellion and sudden upheaval and sudden changes in consciousness, which is Uranus, and it's moving into the sign of Gemini. Now, it was last in the sign of Gemini when we went into the Second World War. Okay. And the last time it was in Gemini and Pluto was in Aquarius together was back in the French Revolution and the American independence. So a lot of this freedom, sovereignty, breaking away from traditional forms of government, awakening of people, desiring for freedom and liberty. Plus, you've got this Saturn-Neptune conjunction sitting right in the middle of it. So that's all happening in 2026. It happened a little bit in 2025, but it didn't pass the threshold. It didn't really, activate. It sort of became aware, but it didn't really materialize, if you like. Whereas we've started this year already with some pretty significant. We ended with the Bondi shooting. We started with the takeover of Venezuela. There's now talk of, like, with the Russian oil tanker thing that's going on, and then Russia's just come out and said, like, if Europe comes to war, there'll be no more Europe. Like, there's a lot of rhetoric around this uptick in potential conflict or the talk of war, right? The rumors of war and all that type of thing. It's going to escalate. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction happens on the 20th of February. Just 3 days before that, there is a solar eclipse. Now, eclipses tend to be punctuation points that whatever potential is there, eclipses tend to realize the potential. They act as like a pin to a balloon, like, boom, there is the release of energy now. The eclipse that happens in February, it hits the Australia birth chart significantly, it hits the American birth chart significantly, and it hits Donald Trump's birth chart significantly. And what I mean by that is that you have a birth chart based on the time, location, and date you were born, and a country does too. Anything that has a birth business, a baby, a country, a product, whatever, will have a birth date, and it will have a birth chart associated to that. And we can look at that chart, and then we can see things happening to it and go, oh, well, that particular event, entity, person, whatever, country is going to have these types of experiences. So the eclipse in February is very significant. 3 days before the Saturn Neptune conjunction, it's going to be a real punctuation point. And I'll be putting some content up around this with regards to Trump's chart, but all eyes on that man. It wouldn't surprise me if he's either taken out of position of power or killed, assassinated. In 2024, I was able to predict his assassination attempt about a month or two before it happened by looking at a signature in his chart going, that's assassination attempt. You just look at that going on. Next thing, that's what happens. Now, we do live in a matrix that is like a simulation, right? It's a movie. So it's scripted in a way. Does he really die? Is he really taken out? No, but it's the story they want us to tell us. That's the story, right? And it's how they are able to, and I say they, whoever is, in control of the shadow aspect of reality, government, media, corporation, whatever, right? Whether it's the bloodlines, the family, the Illuminati, whoever, they know what time it is looking at the sky clock. And they play out the story. And it's not so much about the story, it's about our reaction to the story. And our reaction to the story is what feeds them and empowers them. So, they do a certain thing to elicit a certain reaction. When we give the reaction, that gives them permission for their solution. So it's like the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution.
Yeah.
So they create the problem. Oh my God, this happened, like a false flag or a terror attack or an assassination. Outrage. Cool. Well, here's the solution now.
Yeah.
And the outrage or the response that we give gives them permission to do whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
And I think that by the time we get to late February into March, eclipse season, that conjunction, there's going to be something that occurs that's going to be pretty shocking for world to witness, that's going to then allow us or trigger a response that's going to allow them to do whatever agenda they're pushing. And it looks like a multifaceted thing in relation to potential war, economic collapse, or at least upheaval, and even like like a loss of civility, right? So civil unrest,
Civil war, perhaps.
yeah, civil war, civil unrest, that type of thing. So like that's all kicking off. We're on an upward direct trajectory to that energy at the moment. You can sort of sense that, you can feel that, you can look and see what the fuck's going on, and it's not
Especially the UK. The UK, it looks like it's going to tip over any second.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really messy state from what I've seen.
Yeah. So this all happens. These major alignments all happen within the first 6 months of 2026. And I feel like whatever's happening this year is really giving us the understanding of the next probably 3 to 5 years of what's coming.
Yeah.
And, they're pushing to the more division and unrest, the more insecurity there is, the more people panic, the more of their loss of control, the more it is they can come in with the solution to that. One currency, one world government, one police, one, all that type of agenda. So that's ultimately, I think, where they want to get us to by about 2030, the Great Reset.
Well, the 2030 agenda, yeah.
Yeah. So I think 2026 is the ignition, the lighting of that match. Right? So, and it's probably going to go kaboom. At the beginning, it'll be a big fucking what the fuck moment. So we're not far away from that. Now, some people hear this and, oh my God, they end up in panic. This is not, this sovereign responsibility and leadership requires you to be able to handle reality and then choose response to it. Responsibility is the ability to respond, not react, right? Now we're going into this Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the sign of Aries. Aries is volatile and reactive and impulsive, and it does so out of aggression. Like rage, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, right? That's going to feed into the very thing you don't want to experience. So it's a measured response. It's a pause. It's, just being aware, not necessarily like up in arms and outrage. And then in your own life, in your own community, in your own family, in your own network, how do you become a leader for others to look to that is the level head, is the patient level head, and not getting, not panicking and not fucking like freaking out. Another bit of advice that I would give to people is that you would best to have a bug out kit for worst case scenario situations, which gives you 72 hours worth of food, water, and power, right? From whatever, if it's a candle or it's a battery, it's a torch or whatever. Now, a bug out kit isn't because you need it, it's because you don't want to need it. But if you need it and you haven't got it,
Yeah,
you're
that's
going to go, fuck.
that's a problem.
You do not, if there is some sort of carnage and all of a sudden people panic, go back to the start of COVID when people panicked. What did they do? They went to the shop and they bought the toilet paper. And then after that, they bought all the food. And the next thing, by a day or two, you couldn't get anything. Now, if you haven't planned and you're there with the thousands of other people at the same shop trying to get the last tin of rice, what happens is fucking fight breaks out.
Conflict. Yep.
So you want to
Human
be
nature.
able to sit back for 3 days and go, I'm cool. I don't need to do anything. 3 days is about the length of time it takes for the authorities to get back control and to initiate some sort of order or control or rule.
Yeah.
So I would say that you have a bug out kit. It's got fuel, it's got food and water, and it's got power or battery power or whatever, and communication, and
Communication,
also
two-way
too
radios.
with loved ones on the same frequency. You've at least communicated in the event of I can't call you, in the event of you can't get to you, like what's our plan? What do we do? Do we meet at someone's house? Do we go somewhere? How do we check up on the people that are vulnerable, like our elderly or, single mums and things like that? So that's the smart thing to do as a plan for the unexpected, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that that's going to be needed, but if it is needed and you haven't done it, you're going to be like, oh, fuck, what am I going to do? So it's probably the better thing to do is just have that little plan. And then, later next year, especially through the middle of the year, there's another eclipse season that happens in August. So July, August is another flashpoint in 2026. Two things that will occur around that is potential massive conflict igniting, because you have a Jupiter opposite Pluto transit, which Jupiter is explosive and empowering and it amplifies things, and Pluto is like chaotic and sort of deals with transformation through upheaval and crisis. So their opposition coming in this year, like normally their opposition isn't necessarily that volatile, but this one will be volatile because of what environment it's happening in. And also the other side of that is that you'll probably see around the middle of the year, July, August, you'll probably see either a lot of really, really mega rich people all of a sudden, new rich people, but also new poor people as well. So a real huge disparity in like the haves and have-nots. So rich becoming absolutely mega rich, and also new people, new billionaires, but also on the other end of that, like people losing shit. A bit of that built into it, and that could tie around to like the economic system, the stock market, crypto, that sort of thing. I think
Mm.
it's very volatile, and maybe a trigger point where it either goes boom to nothing or boom to like sky high, or it's when you have an opposition, you have extremes, right? So that's how you got to think of it. It's like we're on one Pluto on one end, Jupiter on the other. They're big extremes, not small things. They're big. So that's why we'll probably see both ends of that play out.
Sounds like it's going to be an interesting year.
Well,
Um,
it's why we're here. It's why humanity's at the point it's at. It's why we've been shown for the last, probably 10 years of like what the fuck's going on. Because what the realization is that you cannot rely on the system, and
oh
you
no,
can't rely on the political system, the governmental system, the economic system, the legal system. You can't rely on the banking system. You can't rely on the health system. You can't rely on the education system. You can't rely on the system.
no.
And we have to come to that realization so that we can then, well, what are we going to do about that? And 2026 is the beginning of like, what are we going to fucking do about this now? So
Well, that's
I'm
it, isn't it?
eager.
It's the collapse of what we have. If that comes about this year or in the next few years, then there has to be, and it's better that it's going to be something we all understand and can foresee, because it will need to be people picking up the slack of where the government has disappeared or whatever it may be.
Mm.
I obviously can't tell the future, so.
No.
And I think that's it, just being prepared, being ready, and being flexible to change.
Yes, absolutely. Flexibility, adaptability, observing, witnessing.
Mm. And
Um,
cool head, as you mentioned before.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's sovereign leadership, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
standing in your power, standing in your sovereignty, like claiming responsibility for your situation where you're at. No, I don't need the support or assistance or help. I'm not going to rely or to become dependent on that. It's up to me. What am I going to do about this?
Yeah.
And then coming together in community and family and friends, and looking after the vulnerable, looking after those that are freaking out as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And what those people that freak out will need is leadership. They'll need someone that they can look to lead. And it's
Yeah.
up to us now, because the system has shown us clearly that there is no leaders in that system.
Well, as you said, there are weak leaders, and weak leaders are dangerous people.
Oh, very dangerous.
Um,
Very.
okay, so we're almost at the hour. If anyone wanted to reach out to you and get a reading or follow you on Instagram, etc., I will have things like that in the clips that I'll be posting after this.
Sure.
But do you want to just give people some way of contacting you or finding you?
Yeah. So it's funny. Astrology is one of those things that I don't have a lot of male clients. In fact, I have about 80% female and 20% male. I would like to see that change, and I would like to demystify astrology in a way that's accessible to men, masculine men leading and doing the work. And of the men that I do have, that's their sort of nature, right? So one thing is with modern social media and like the spiritual woo aspect of spirituality is like astrology, there's a lot of bad media and stuff around it in the relation to it's just fucking people crapping on about Mercury retrograde. And I would like to say that's not the case. It's just a tool to help you understand yourself, your life, and where you're at and how to navigate. And it's a fantastic tool. I was a pest controller for 20 years and made the transition into this line of work because I understood it at a level. I knew its power and potency, and I also saw how it's being used in our culture and societies for thousands of years. How it's been also over the last 500 years, it's been sort of pushed aside and not given its importance for us, and that's by design, right? So don't fall into that same like pseudoscience and woo woo stuff. That's just the aspect of it that you have maybe been exposed to, and I would say that that's not reality.
Well, the church demonized a lot of things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
For
So
control.
yeah, yeah. And then also now the sort of, what would you call it, the political corporate media system that sort of work hand in hand. They also continue to do the same thing, and that's for very good reason. They don't want you looking into it and utilizing it, right?
Using their
So
tools.
yeah, so my nature is like, motherfuckers, fuck that. I'm going to look into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely like to see more men come to this sort of work. But you can just contact me through any platform online. If you type my name, Luke Balcke, into any, whether it's a Google website, Instagram, YouTube, wherever, I'm the only Luke Balcke in the world.
Yep.
So yep, and then you can access my website or message me directly, and we can tee up a connection.
Cool. So LUKEBELKE.
BALCKE.
Balk. BAL. Sorry, say it
CKE.
again.
Yeah, so it's BALCKE.
BALCKE. Okay. So your website, Insta, Facebook, etc.
Everything. You just type that name and it'll come up with all the stuff that I've ever done, plus my website links and my YouTube and my Instagram. And yeah.
Yeah, cool. Luke, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I would almost want to keep talking for another hour or so. There's so much that we could go into.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe, another time.
Maybe we could do like an update sort of mid-year or something like that.
Yeah, that's a
We'll
good
go,
idea.
yeah,
Around August and see how the energies are looking.
absolutely, mate.
Yeah. All right, Luke, thank you very much. I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you all for joining us. This has been Dragonfire Podcast, and speak to you or hear us next time.